make the trek all the way out here today. So thank you guys for walking or driving out here. I know it's further from the place where we've met, I guess in the past year, but this will be our home for all the tech team meetings this year. I appreciate you guys all coming out. We'll go ahead and make some introductions, go around the room. So I will start. I'm Marissa Weinberg. I'm with the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Land.
Good, sir. Also with Forestry, Fire,
Yiming Su from Utah State University, from Water Research Lab.
I'm Som Datta, and I'm also from Utah State University, Mechanical and Aerospace.
I'm Diana. I'm a graduate student at USU working at the Water Lab.
I'm Eris Larson. I'm a graduate student at USU Mechanical Aerospace.
Phil Johnson, University of Utah.
Phil Brown, Great Salt Lake Ranger Cooperative.
John Love, Wildlife Resources.
Andrew Rupke, Utah Geological Survey.
Elliot Jagnecky, Utah Geological Survey.
Ronald Woolley. I'm just a visitor. I'm hoping to get some input and some understanding about the Great Salt Lake. I've developed an interest in it over the last 2 years since I'm retiring, and I have some show and tell. I don't know if you, Melissa, if you got an email from
I
me.
did. Unfortunately, we won't have time today, but we can chat later about
All right.
the meeting.
Good. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Jen?
Jennifer Biggs with the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands.
We'll go all the way to the back, whoever wants to.
I get started. So I'm Brian Cookson at USU in the Water Research Lab.
Linda Freitas, Friends of Great Salt Lake.
Sam Schrad, Fish and Wildlife Service, Ecological.
Hunter Snyder with Wildlife Research.
Alan Blakowski, U.S. Geological Survey.
Christine Rumsey, U.S. Geological Survey.
Ryan Doherty, Cargill Salt.
Great. And then we have a few online participants: Joe Havasey, Jack Gray, Kim Coburn, Leanna Littler-Wolf, and Susan Zarkarisi. So thank you all for being here again. I'll just go ahead and dive into some Great Salt Lake updates from our different meeting bodies. So the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council, just a few project updates on what we've been working on. As most of you know, SWCA helped the Advisory Council, our division, Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, and Water Resources complete the Great Salt Lake project at the end of 2023. Essentially, this list identified a myriad of implementation projects that could benefit Great Salt Lake. The project gathered information from a very diverse range of stakeholders, both through interviews and surveys. And these projects focus on initiatives that could increase water delivery, improve or conserve habitat, and other tangible benefits to the lake. So if you did come to our January 10th Advisory Council meeting, SWCA presented on this project. The list is now live on our website, GSLAC's website, and Water Resources website. So if you at any point want to get a hold of that fancy Excel sheet, please do visit one of those websites and give it a download. And if you have any issues at any point in time, definitely reach out. I'm more than happy to help you out. Another project that we just contracted and are kicking off in the next couple of weeks is the Water Conservation Toolbox. And we've also contracted with SWCA to complete that project. GSLAC will be partnering with the Division of Water Resources to complete this project. It'll look at water conservation ordinances for municipalities. So kind of hopefully a complement to other ongoing studies, which is why we've partnered with Division of Water Resources. So more to come on that, especially if you come to GSLAC meetings, we'll tell you more about it. And then our next meeting is March 13th at the Eccles Wildlife Center in Farmington, 10 to 11:30, same time as usual. And just so you know, we won't have a May meeting. So March is the next one for a while. I will go ahead and pass it on to my boss, Ben, to talk about the Salinity Advisory Committee.
Thanks, Marissa. So for the study committee, I think that Christine could probably do a better update than I could, but I'll try to regurgitate what she said. So I think that projections show that in an average winter, we would almost around 106 grams per liter in the South Arm. Under average conditions, I think this winter's going to be perhaps above average. So fingers crossed that that is the case. Mixing continues to be an issue in the South Arm, so short circuiting from, Bear River, just heading right out North Arm and not getting that full mixing. So I think that's probably a focus that we're going to take on the salinity committee is a salinity management plan that will really kind of dial in on how we can best maximize our exports of salt to the North Arm when that's our goal. And also just from a legislative standpoint, there was a little clarification to the berm language that was passed in HB 513. It tells us when we can manage that berm. So that's currently in HB 453, and I think it'll provide some clarity about when our division can alter that berm. Previously, the Senate committee had made a recommendation that I don't think we were able to follow, mainly because it was kind of outside the parameters of the intent of when we could manage that berm. So before we were managing for emergency conditions, trying to if there was a condition that necessitated managing that, we were doing so. But under the new law, we would be able to manage just to try to be a little more preventative and proactive. So hopefully that passes. I think it's a good tool for us to be able to use. But that's the only update I have.
Ben, did you say that would be a provision in HB 453?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, so the way it reads now is that the way it reads in the bill is that we would be able to raise or lower the berm, and the salinity committee would need to make a recommendation that also has a schedule for when we can take the berm down. It doesn't necessarily say that we're going to guarantee results of what that would be, but we should base it off of modeling and trying to equalize lake levels. It gives us 6 feet of leeway. So if there were if there was a discrepancy in that difference, there's quite a bit of room there for us to let things settle out over the years. Hopefully it's something we can try to treat the whole lake as a whole, because I know the North Arm has its intricacies as well. So we'll look at it holistically.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's come to my attention that the link on the agenda is not letting people in. So if there's anyone texting you, feel free to direct them to me and I can send them to the link. I don't know why that's happening again. Anyway, thanks, Ben. So we'll now talk about tech team updates. I'm sure you're all curious to know about the recent request for grant applications that I sent out last week. I'll first talk about the fiscal year 24 cycle. So that grant cycle is over halfway done now. You should have received a reminder email if you were a grantee regarding getting your invoices in before June 30th, as well as your final report on June 30th as well. If you have issues with that deadline for whatever reason, let me know. I know that our fiscal schedule doesn't always align well with others, but please just reach out. We don't want to run into any hiccups where we can't pay you the money that you were granted. So definitely let me know. Also, if you haven't already contacted me about a presentation slot for your tech team grant, definitely contact me. We're trying to fill in spots for the rest of this year with your grant presentation. So please reach out. And then on to fiscal year 25. So that request was released last Thursday, February 8th. It'll be due no later than March 8th at 5 p.m. So if you did get that email, hopefully you all did. This grant cycle includes the same hot topics as last year. We liked those hot topics because they cast a pretty wide net and kind of encompass all of the issues on the lake that we want to know more about to inform our management. You'll notice though that something that changed on this request, we increased the weight in the ranking criteria for projects that'll directly benefit the division's management of the lake. We also increased the weight on projects that will complement the Commissioner's Office strategic plan, as well as our 2013 CMP. Unfortunately, the current CMP won't be done in time, so maybe next cycle. So we released this request earlier this year, hoping to get contracts in place as soon as possible. So folks that are doing research can begin to gather the troops and figure out a plan well before funding becomes available on July 1. So if you have any questions or issues with that request, definitely bug me. We're hoping for another good round of research next fiscal year. And again, you'll be able to request that higher dollar amount. So that was novel last year, and this year we're doing the same thing. And the request is also on our website. So if you didn't get that email, it is on our website. So does anyone have any questions or concerns about any of the updates we just, anyone online? Cool. So that said, we'll just dive right into presentations. We have Yiming Su from Utah State University here to talk about greenhouse gas storage and the sequestration of Great Salt Lake. I cannot say that word. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull up his presentation and it's old. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just let me know the slides.
Okay.
And if you want to like,
Yeah, I think I have
or you want you can take my
I
computer.
have it.
You can just take it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Thank you. It's my great pleasure to give the presentation here, and then I really appreciate this opportunity. So I just joined the USU 2 years ago, and I had a little interest about greenhouse gas, and then I realized Great Salt Lake, there's a possibility that it's a storage. It's really huge storage for greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide. And then if there's a possibility, if it's evolving the direction of Dead Sea, then it will release carbon dioxide constantly in the following decades. But there's a possibility because we're managing salinity pretty well. So hopefully we could actually continually sequestration carbon dioxide by good management, hopefully. So as we all know, the global temperature is increasing significantly. If we reuse this time average temperature before 1990, and then that average temperature has been increasing significantly after that. You see that, right? And then the global climate change caused flood, and then really severe droughts, as we all know, the droughts, right, cause severe impact on the Great Salt Lake. And then this is the most recent data, right? Because this year the winter is very severe El Nino impact on the global climate, right? And then recent news in San Diego, it's flooding. Unfortunately, it's a beautiful city, but it's flooding at this moment, at this time. And then if we keep the way we're doing, we probably will end up with this climate increase, the temperature increase. But if we do something, the current policy, then by the 2100, and then the increase of the temperature will be over around 3 Celsius degree. And then if we significantly lower our GHG emission, then we will be ending in 1.5 or 2 Celsius degree, which is great. That's the global image picture. Then let's see the data at the US, and then particularly at the Utah. And this is the emission of the Utah 2020. Utah ranks the total carbon dioxide emission. It's about 1.2% of the whole US. And then if you look at the rankage, the per capita, it's quite Utah ranked 19 per capita GHG emission. And then why we need to concern about this GHG emission, right? Because it's closely related to the water, droughts and the flood, right? And then if you look at in the past, before 2022, we all were talking about the drought impact, right? Colorado River is going to dry up. I think everybody knows much better than me sitting here, and also the Great Salt Lake. Just a illustration. And then why we need to, how can I connect this GSL, Great Salt Lake, to the GHG emission? How can we, what's the connections behind this kind of topic? So So it's in general, if we the salinity, the figure here, the x-axis is the temperature, the y-axis is the carbon dioxide concentration in the water. So if we have higher, this is a lower salinity. If you increase salinity, and then this carbon dioxide concentration in the water going to decline significantly, and also increased temperature will drop this concentration as well. And then in the Great Salt Lake, the water contains carbon dioxide, and then, which is higher than the atmosphere. And then if the temperature is increasing, then they will release some of the carbon dioxide previously dissolved in the water. And then plus the salinity increase, then also you will get less carbon dioxide inside as well. So good news is that this is from Davis, the director of the water labs data. Most recent paper they published 2023, and then good thing is we're maintaining even the south and then both the south and north arm, they have relatively stable salinity. And then salinity could be related to the alkalinity. Alkalinity mainly is carbon in Great Salt Lake. Alkalinity is, I think it's carbonate, right? Everybody, if I'm wrong, correct me. Yeah, I did a little bit of research on that. And then alkalinity could be really closely related to the carbon dioxide. And then if we can mining alkalinity, then it will be even better. We could kind of mining carbon dioxide, right, from the Great Salt Lake. And then if you look at the south and then the sink in this angle, the south, the coming in is these rivers, right? And then if you look at the carbon to calcium, why I'm looking at this value, because in the water, mainly the calcium will precipitate out with the carbonate and then forms the precipitate at the lake shore. I think there's one report from this group. I think maybe I will cite later, but if you look at that, this is carbonate ratio to the calcium in the lake water or in the river water is close to 3, but when it gets to the lake, it's close to 1.5. And then it's quite interesting to notice where are those carbon go. This is right here. Oh yeah, great report. I cite this. This one is the I don't know if I understand it correctly, but this is the point I get. It's lake shore is really important for the water comes in the river water, right? Calcium and the carbonate. I think that this is where we could do a lot of managing work there to better provide a management to kind of bring down the carbon dioxide. Don't try to preventing them to evaporate over the time, just back to the atmosphere. And then if you look at this whole lake in the view of south and the sink angle, and then we coming in the lake, you coming calcium, manganese, and then atmosphere, you also coming in carbonate comes in, and also you have inorganic and then both organic coming in, carbon coming in. And then you have in the lake, you have carbon dioxide dissolving and also escaping carbon dioxide on the lake surface. And then it's a balance, right? It depends on if the overall, the net carbon credits, it's depending on those rates coming in and then out, and also the accumulation, right? So the mainly part what I'm looking at is the carbon and carbonate, and then there's a possibility that they could dissolve or precipitate out. And then if you look at the previous data, the calculation due 1970s, they were looking at the sink, the total coming in, the water, carbonate, and then calcium. If we assume that the lake shore did a really good job, kind of allow the carbonate and the calcium to kind of precipitate out in the lake shore area, the shallow area, and then we can use the calcium. Just to look at the calcium, how much calcium precipitate out, and then coincidentally, the carbonate will also precipitate out, right? How much annually million tons of the bicarbonate, carbon dioxide can be immobilized, right? This is the data. I did a little bit calculation, the 0.1 to 0.2 million tons of carbon dioxide can be immobilized by the coming in calcium. And then if you look at this is the overall, the total sink in the Great Salt Lake. It's on the carbon side, it's this much. There's 22.25 times 10 to 15 grams overall, the carbon sink in the Great Salt Lake. And then if this is the recent data, 2020, they were looking at because we are discharge a lot of water just to increase the water level in Great Salt Lake, right? So they modify the discharge, the man-made discharge, and then plus the river water comes in. And if you look at this kind of data, if you increase the volume of the discharge, and then overall, it's about 0.4 million tons of the carbon dioxide, which is immobilized over the process. And then if you look at the carbon dioxide emission in Utah, overall, it's about 60 million tons of the carbon dioxide. And then if you recall, and then this is a commercial and a residential and a commercial carbon dioxide emission, GHG emission. And then the GSL, it's about 0.4 million tons. And then this is 10% of the commercial and then residential carbon dioxide emission. If we keep it as a good source of the carbon dioxide sequestration process, that will be really good. And then, so how can we evaluate this role, the GSL's role in carbon dioxide sequestration or storage? But recently, we see the shrink of the surface area and the increase. That's not a good trend. But if we have high temperature, generally, if you have high temperature, low carbon dioxide solubility, and then will escape the carbon dioxide previously in the water will escape, and also low water flux in the GSL will cause even lower carbon dioxide capture, and then increase the escape rate. And then the high salinity again will reversely impact the solubility again. So overall, this process is not healthy for the GSL in the angle of carbon dioxide. So this is the direction, right? So it's not a good case. It's that C. It's beautiful, right? It's beautiful, but unfortunately, it's a carbon positive case. So continuously during the droughts, and then this is continually happening because this is the Dead Sea is continuously releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is quite impressive. If you look at the data, they calculate that the annual flux of carbon dioxide escape to the atmosphere is at this scale. We will come to look at that data later on. And then the flux, the carbon dioxide flux precipitated out by calcium salts, which is just a 1.1, and compare this escape is actually two times higher than that. And then if we look at I use these data to calculate how much possibly Great Salt Lake could capture or escape release the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So the lower the carbon dioxide capture rate could be 0.21 million tons, but the escape rate could be 0.37, which is unfortunate. If we use that data, then we will actually GSL is kind of releasing carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. How can we reverse this trend, which is add more water and then good management, which I think that's the basic step to increase to minimize the carbon dioxide escape, and also to increase the high carbon dioxide mineralization. And there according to my little research, I think there are some management we could do, or research we could do is first is because it's lake shore is really important. So wetland preservation, and also its growing carbon dioxide mineralization needs to be quantitatively studied. And then the first is, I think, the carbon dioxide sequestration quantification, and then how can we enhance this the wetland plants growing in the presence of the high salinity and then with the carbon dioxide bicarbonate, and also the better wetland management, right? Because maybe you wanna harvest some of the plants, or how can we move on from there if we let them grow quite well? The species we could do, they can mineralize the carbon dioxide, and then after the growing, because the winter comes, how can we manage that, right? So that's kind of the issues we will get. And then this is, I think, I got it from maybe people sitting here, but it's from UGS study. It's saying the microbiolites in the presence of the high salinity. It's quite impressive. These are all kind of using the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere or in the water to grow. And then this is how much the growth will contribute to the carbon dioxide immobilization, right? So, and then look at this temperature, pH, salinity, how the salinity change will impact that kind of growth of the microorganisms. It's also another important aspect. And then if you look at the algae growing in the Great Salt Lake, and then they are actually could be using carbon dioxide, bicarbonate or carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And then how can we managing those algae growing in the angle of carbon dioxide sequestration? That will be even that maybe deserve some time and effort. And plus those algae, maybe it's really good source of food, also diesel. And then this is the this is the physical chemical process we could use. It's quite popular, how to mining carbon dioxide from saline water. And then there are multiple ways, but this electrochemical process is quite popular, and then it's quite feasible at this moment. There are some issues in this technology, and then I was working as a postdoc in this group, and we are quite familiar with this kind of electrochemical process. It's quite stable right now. And this is just a news I recently found online. South Korea, they're gonna do a very large plant scale carbon dioxide and excellent salt water demonstration, and even into the application. And then to me, I think this is the takeaway message. So right now we don't know it's carbon positive or carbon negative of GSL. And then we need to look at the carbon dioxide escape, and then the precipitate farming, and the in-lake biocaptures like wetlands and algae, something like that, and then also carbon dioxide dissolution process. And then the strategy for achieving these carbon negative, then how can we enhance those positive aspects and then minimize the negative aspects. And then if we can create out the carbon credits, we can achieve some carbon dioxide mineralization. Then I think it could be contribute to bring in the water to the lake, right, further. So, and then in the long go, stable desirable water level overall, and then also stable salinity level, and then a stable alkalinity level. With that, I would like to take any question if I can answer.
Okay. Anyone have questions in the room? Elliot?
Do we know how much CO2 is escaping from the lake itself? Like, has that been monitored by USGS in the past, or?
Yeah, so the data, that's the estimation is this one.
Right, but we haven't, yeah, we haven't like physically measured gassing CO2 from the lake, right?
You mean, what is that based on, that estimate?
This is based on the from the data from the Dead Sea,
And so just applying the same surface area, or,
applied with the surface area.
because I don't remember the depth to volume, the depth to area, ratio for, Dead Sea, but obviously it's very small for Great Salt Lake, right? Yeah. And by analogy, when we were looking at selenium, we found that because the lake is stirred so frequently, it exports selenium in the form of a volatile form called dimethylselenide or related forms. And so that's how it maintains a low level of selenium despite relatively low level of selenium despite letting it hit. And I suspect the same thing is kind of true of carbon dioxide, that the lake is stirred enough that equilibrium with the atmosphere carbon drives processes in the lake, and it's more about tying the carbon dioxide to alkalinity. And so maybe the conceptual model that you're raising two things that I find interesting. One is there's a view of the lake in terms of carbon dioxide, right? That I haven't heard articulated all that much. And then second, that the inflows from the rivers and that processing of the margins of the lake is really important in terms of carbon sequestration. I think those are two really important points. Right? But I suspect that in the lake itself, there's more of an equilibrium process occurring through the stirring.
Yeah, makes sense. The Dead Sea is like, well, it used to be 300 meters deep, but so I mean, it's a deeper rift basin, so a lot more volume vertically, harder to mix.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting. Could you go back to the part where you showed Utah's CO2 emissions overall?
Yeah.
And then could you say again what percentage you estimate the lake might contribute to that?
If you look at it, that's the total, right? 60 million tons of carbon dioxide. And then within that, commercial and the residential, this is the residential and this is the commercial.
It's hard
And
to
then
see
it's about three.
three.
It's about three commercial, and then it's 4.5 for residential. And then if we do good job, or if the data I'm right now interpreting is correct, it's about 0.4. The GSL will contribute to the immobilization process. So it's about 10% of that.
Of residential.
Of the residential and of
And a
commercial.
tiny fraction of the overall output.
Yeah, you could say
60 million tons compared to 0.4 million tons.
60. Yeah, I mean, it's overall, it's not so big.
But when compared to our residential output, it's
It's still limited. It's also just a 10% of that. But yeah, that's kind of you didn't really take in those wetlands contribution, lake, algae growing stuff. If we do a good job managing those kind of, there's a hope, I think. But that's already a good sign. Like if we can approve that's the case, you're mobilizing, the lake is able to mobilizing carbon dioxide. That's good, right? Instead of releasing carbon dioxide back to the atmosphere.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Amy. It looks like Scott left a comment online. I don't think that's a question, but I can make sure that gets to you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much. Next, we have Sam, who a lot of you are already familiar with, presenting on his tech team grant from fiscal year 23 on modeling the flow through the West Crack Reach to aid adaptive management of Great Salt Lake. So, Tom, thanks for speaking again for us. Are you good to share your screen?
Trying to.
Okay.
Can't share.
Were you able to get?
You were in.
That works.
Thanks. Hello, everybody. So I'm presenting to the tech team after about a couple of years. So I'm Soam Datta, and with me is my team from Utah State, Professor Brian Crookston from CE and the Water Lab, and a couple of graduate students, Diana Dunn and Eric Larson. One of the graduate students who has also contributed is not present here because from Salota. And again, thanks to all the collaboration with USGS, Christine, Ryan, Scott, Andy, Mike. Without them, this work is not possible. And also contributions from inputs from Utah DNRs, Craig Miller and Laila Ahmadi. And of course, discussions with Jeff Denblaker, Professor Bill Johnson, and Professor Wayne Wadsworth. So with that, what we'll be talking about today is giving you an update of, we have been going after modeling the flow through, I call it West Craig Breach, but I was reminded we should call it maybe the new Causeway Breach. And we have been trying to model that for a while, and we have developed different models over the years. So I will give you an update on that and how we are trying all this effort to basically aid the adaptive management of the Great Salt Lake. And along with that, before we get into the modeling aspect of it, Diana will give a presentation of, in the last 1 year, she has been interpreting the salinity data, which has been measured historically, and trying to find some patterns within it, and what we are trying to do with that in collaboration with Christine from USGS. So with that, Diana, you take over, and then I will get back.
Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Diana. I'm a graduate student working with Brian and Sam at USU. And I'm going to be talking to you guys a little bit about the data analysis that I've done on historical salinity going back to 2017 within the south arm of the Great Salt Lake, and some of the implications that analysis may have on current lake modeling and salinity studies. So really, since 2017, there's been a bit of an increase in monitoring salinity at the lake. However, a lot of available data sets aren't being incorporated into current models or salinity studies because of the uncertainty that we have with combining multiple data sets. So the main question that we have within this study is just if we can improve current lake modeling by using all of this available data. So really the main contribution will be development of a specific conductance conversion equation that's applicable for salinity levels within the South Arm, and also compiling and using all of these available salinity data sets to inform the development of a physics-based mass balance model that uses all this available data and also incorporates a lot of the really great exchange flow modeling that Brian and Eric have been doing. So with that, the first thing that we did was we looked at what data was available, and for us, we compiled data from the GS database, the USGS available data on NWIS, DWIR's Great Salt Lake Ecosystem Program data that we accessed through a grant request, along with the published HDR monitoring that they performed as part of their bridge construction project, and then also the data that Phil Brown and the Brandship Cooperative included as SI in the publication put out back in 2022. So this total data set combines observations of density, specific gravity, specific conductance, percent salinity, and also salinity derived from conductivity meter readings. We applied various conversion equations to get at one cohesive data set of salinity in grams per liter. So with that, we were looking from January 2017 to January 2023, and how we got these observations of salinity that I've plotted up on the graph on the left, which is just a time series from 2017 to 2023. Each observation represents the average through the upper brine layer if there is a profile measurement that was taken during a sampling event. We calculated that using the USGS depth to deep brine layer data that Christine and Ryan so kindly provided us. So in total, again, within the period of analysis, we saw data from 26 different sampling sites, about 3,280 observations of a brine layer average salinity. And so when we're looking at this graph, we see a continuous seasonal pattern in lower salinity levels that generally isn't occurring between July and October when the climate is really dry and there's lower inflow volume to the lake. And that's indicated by the orange shaded regions within the graph. And with talking with Christine and Ryan at the USGS, we know that there's multiple occasions at sites where they monitor regularly where inflows from Bear River Bay and also Farmington Bay are protruding into the South Arm and are fully mixing at those sites. So to filter out those observations, we decided to remove data from site 2200, 2267, 2767, and also 2583, which I've circled on the map there, and are indicated by the star symbols within the plot. That ended up being about 151 observations that we filtered out, which is about 5% of the data set. However, that still left about 40 outliers of significantly lower salinity. And this occurred across 7 different sites, and there was no regular pattern through space or time. So we decided to leave those within our data because we couldn't really attribute those to any defined persistent lake dynamics. So with this filtered compiled data set, we still see a decent amount of spread through the central trend included by those gray observation points within the time series. So what we wanted to do was to understand how much of that spread is attributed to combining data from various sampling locations versus combining the actual data sets with different field and analytical methods. So we performed some uncertainty analysis within this data set. The first thing that we did was we subsetted the global data into 3 different sets. One is salinity derived from specific conductance, from density, and from percent salinity. What we did was within each subset, we literally interpolated between sampling events at each of those sites to get a daily salinity value. And then we calculated the daily standard deviation across those sites through each subset to be able to understand, given data derived from a specific parameter, what are the differences within the lake and space. And so we performed a error propagation analysis. We took a root mean square error approach, and we found that there's about 6.8 grams per liter standard deviation that we could expect within the total compiled data set on a given day that can be attributed to combining it from various sampling locations. And we took a very similar approach to isolate the uncertainty that we find from combining multiple data sets derived from different proxy measurements. So to do that, we just took the data from 2565 up in Carrington Bay and also 3510 in Gilbert Bay to understand what spread that we're seeing from combining data from specific conductance, density, and percent salinity. So on average, that period of analysis, there is about a 5 gram per liter standard deviation, which is about 4% of the average salinity that we were seeing during this time. So really, what is the application of that? Given the 2 sources of uncertainty that we have, multiple sampling locations, different field and analytical methods, we determined about a 10 gram per liter standard deviation within the compiled data set. So given a 90% confidence interval, that means that the median salinity that we calculated for every day, that is indicated in the gray line on the plot, is representative of any point within the South Arm, plus or minus about 18 grams per liter. Now, that's a very high amount of variability. It's about 10 to 20% of the salinity levels that generally occur within a given year during the South Arm. So what we wanted to do was raise the question of what's truly representative and what data should we be feeding models and not for salinity studies. So what we did was we wanted to compare this representative median salinity to data that's commonly used within the Great Salt Lake Integrated Model and other things that are being done at the lake. And so when we compare salinity versus median salinity, which are the 2 plots up on the left, at site 3510 and 2565, they tend to overrepresent salinity in the South Arm when compared to the median that we calculated. And really just using that combined with the results from this uncertainty analysis, we know that when we're just using data from 1 or 2 sites within the South Arm, it can vary upwards of plus or minus 11 grams per liter, which again, it's a pretty large amount of variability when we're averaging through space. So what that suggests is that using a volume weighted average to develop a representative south arm salinity could potentially improve some of the estimates we're getting from our models. And then another thing to note as well from this uncertainty analysis is that when we combine data derived from the 3 main parameters monitored at the lake, it introduces again another 9 grams per liter of uncertainty within our salinity values for the south arm. So that just really emphasizes the need to coordinate field and analytical methods, which is already being done, and coordinating sampling locations, because that will really serve to increase the temporal resolution of the data and minimize some of the interpolation needed to get at a daily or monthly salinity value within the south arm, and also would decrease the uncertainty that's introduced when we have to combine data from a variety of different sources and proxy measurements. So really the main takeaways from this study that we've determined is that we can combine salinity data sets, but it's necessary to filter to get a representative south arm salinity value. We can also combine multiple data sets, but that introduces uncertainty, which we quantified. However, using this compiled salinity time series that we have, it's really necessary to use that with an understanding of the variability that comes with that data set, but also knowing that we can subset the compiled data to meet whatever the goals of its application are. And then finally, we've also determined that using a volume weighted south arm model where we're breaking it up into bays instead of just averaging through space and through the upper brine layer may be a better way to represent the south arm within different models and studies. So where we're going with that, as Tom mentioned, using the tools that we've developed in this study along with the West Crook Reach exchange flow modeling, we're going to be using these tools to develop a physics-based mass balance model of the south arm that will be capable of altering the berm heights and also hydrologic conditions. And with that, we plan to run management scenarios and compare those results to our representative salinity time series to be able to better quantify how the berm can be used to adaptively manage salinity for a variety of hydrologic conditions we may be seeing in the future. And ultimately be able to develop some hopefully helpful management strategies. So that's everything that we're currently working on and the end goal. And I think I'll be passing this off to Sam now to talk about some of the West Crook Reach modeling.
So if you guys have any questions, you can quickly ask them, or you can hold it till I end my part of the presentation, whichever you guys prefer.
Maybe let's wait till
Okay.
we're all done. Yeah.
So now what I'm going to quickly give you an overview of where we are about modeling the exchange flow at the breach, which we call the new causeway breach. And because that point has been found to be the main point of exchange between the north and the south side, and has increasingly become very important for adaptive management with the increase and decrease in the berm being made pretty aggressively as we go on. So what has the modeling tools which has been used till date mostly has been which was developed in 1976 by Professor Ed Holey, and it basically is a gradually varying flow-based model which basically takes in the water surface elevation of the north and the south and the density of the two sides and gives you a value of the flow between the two sides. What it does not account for very easily and in a physics informed manner is the change in berm height. And again, that model was developed back in the days for a culvert, was adapted for the new breach. But what I will talk about by the end of this presentation is how we are taking it to the next level. We call it Holey 2.0. Currently, what we have is in the last 3 years of work, we have developed multiple CFD models, which has helped us interpret the physics of the flow. And then it has also helped us to talk about, so this is the CFD model. It's basically not getting into too many details of it because some of you might have seen this earlier. But what this model allowed was that it helped us not just understand the flow. A couple of years back, when the decision of raising the berm was first being discussed, this CFD model was able to tell us what kind of berm height increase would actually stop all the north to south flow. and we were pretty happy that kind of estimates we gave panned out pretty correctly. Now, what we have done till then, everything we had done, apart from the 0 feet berm, nothing was built till 2022, right? The first time the berm was raised to the 4 feet height was in July 2022. So since then, we had more measurements from USGS, which basically told us, and I'm showing a couple of comparisons, which is telling us that the model is still performing well as we raise the berm, and that means basically for the 4 feet berm. What we have also done is we have run a bunch of simulations for the 6 feet berm, from which we are making rating curves. And we will talk about how we have used the CFD data not only to inform the physics, but we have used it to come up with something what we call a dynamic rating curve. And we don't at this point of time have enough CFD runs for the 4 feet berm to create a rating curve out of it. But the results I will show next for the 0 feet berm rating curve gives us hope that this method will essentially work also for all the other berm heights. So what we did was we took the CFD data and we used simple Bernoulli's theorem. And what we said was we came up with an estimate for height of the interface based on the density of the water on both sides of the lake, the density difference. And then we added a couple of correction factors, dynamic correction factors based on average velocity of the flow through the breach. Now, you might ask that information is not readily available, say in something like a GSLIM model. But what we did was, that's why we call it a dynamic rating curve, because we use a fixed point iterative method to basically start with a 0 estimate of velocity, and we were able to converge to the correct values. And what we did was we basically first used the CFD data to come up with the coefficients, CN and CS. And when we tested that rating curve with the measured monthly measurements from USGS, it did okay, not very well compared to what we call the benchmark, which we have to improve upon, that is the 1D et Hawley's model. But we took that method, and what we said is, okay, instead of using the CFD data, what if we come up with CN and CS from all the measurements we have at the breach? And this data is essentially all the data which came out of a model we will talk about later, what we call the index ANN model, which was used by Christine for her salt balance modeling she has been doing. So when we took that, we came up with new coefficients based on the optimization method. And then when we took that, and if you see the two plots, so this is on the left-hand side is Q north to south, and the right-hand side is discharge south to north. And what we see is we are actually predicting with this dynamic rating curve, our prediction is almost as good as what we are getting for the 1D model. Now, what you might say that, but it's as good, why not better? What we are planning is that essentially, because we have a lot more data, and what we show through this method is that these values could be tunable. So the next thing what we are doing is tuning these further using machine learning so that we can get a better estimate of CN and CS so that we can go further beyond. And for this method working for the 0 feet berm shows us that as we go ahead for the 4 feet and 6 feet, this method will work for that. And
What are the axes?
So on the y-axis is the model predicted measurement, and x-axis is what is measured by USGS. So the 45-degree line is like when you have. Probably said that. Sorry. Thank you. So apart from that, one of the success stories has been what we call the index ANN, in which basically what we have used machine learning, and to it we feed the velocities at 10 different levels measured at the breach by the USGS uplooker. And that essentially then helps us predict the flow to the north and flow to the south. And when we trained it and tested it, it got really high R squared. And then this model, we had so much faith in it that we basically passed on the data predicted by that model to Christine for her salt balance calculations she has been doing. And as you might know, that it did help her calculation to gain more fidelity, because we could give it almost daily prediction of north to south flow and south to north flow through the breach. And on the top plot, what I'm showing is essentially a prediction by the 1D model, that is Ed Hawley's model, versus the index ANN. And what you see is till a certain stage, or till a certain value of discharge, that is around till say 2,000-3,000 CFS, Ed Hawley's model actually does comparable to these more methods like the ANN. But as we go on to higher discharges, it starts to disperse away from it. So this one of the questions is, especially when we have these cases in which we have weather events, when a lot of flow go either north to south or south to north through the breach, this is when the current model which are implemented in GStream, like the Ed Hawley's model, those stop working because it does not account for these really large transients. So the question is now, how can we take the ANN models and the models we will talk about next and couple it with GSlim? That's one of the big next questions, which continuously, whenever I ask Craig, and I don't know if Craig is here, whenever I ask Craig, what next, he said, okay, let's couple these to GSlim. So I'm not going to talk about the other ANN models, but quickly, the other new stuff we have is what we call generalized area-based index model, or GABI. And this is basically taking the UpLooker data, and instead of putting it inside a black box called an artificial neural network, what we do is we do a more physics-based method in which we are just taking the velocity and multiplying with the area of cross-section. Fidelity of this model will improve as we bring in data from the new UpLooker, which USGS has up there, which has velocities not just at 10 levels, but at up to 50 levels. And when we take that model, and the good thing about the GABI model is it works for all kind of berm heights. It does not matter if it's 0 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet, any berm height, we can use GABI. If we have the velocity data or have an estimate of it, we can use it to give us a good estimate of the flow. And what we did was we checked GABI against measurements when we had not just the 0 feet berm, but 4 feet berm. And what we find is, so we had the raw model had an NSE of 0.4, which is not that good. But then we have an adjusted version of the model, which is giving us the NSE of around 0.6 to 0.7, depending on which direction we are estimating, flow at which direction we are estimating. And finally, what is we are currently working on, and the future is essentially reimagining and re-implementing Ed Hawley, but accounting for the berms. So this is a quick, brief overview I will give. What we are doing is, original Ed Hawley's model first only used a rectangular cross-section and essentially modeled the whole breach as in a one go. In order to account for the berm, what we are doing is we are breaking up the domain into 3 parts: flow at the interface of the flow over the berm, and then before and after. And we have re-derived the equations according to that. And what we are going through is, and also we have in the new version of the model, we are including a trapezoidal cross-section, which is akin to the cross-section we actually have in the breach. So going forward, we will be able to account for the berm, and it will be for any berm height. So this model, and the idea is, unlike the CFD model, which takes 2 weeks to run one case, this model will be like the current model you guys have at GSlim, should be able to give you an answer within a minute or within a few seconds, but accounting for the berm height with proper physics. So with that, basically just a conclusion that this is what we talk about the present and the near future, and talking about next year and way ahead. Something I just heard at the start of the meeting was the whole uncertainty about what the Bear River is doing and how it is not mixing well. So maybe the next thing, while we are wrapping up the causeway breach, the next big modeling focus most probably has to be, of course, with collaboration with the ESGS, is about what is happening at the Bear River Bay Bridge and trying to understand the flow and where the water from there is going, so that we can understand the routing in the south side better. With that, any questions, both for Diana and me?
Thank you, Tom, Diana. Does anyone have any questions in the room?
Yeah.
Bill?
So thanks, nice presentation. And I just wanted to ask about, you use a spatial filter, you filtered out certain sites. But those other outliers had a temporal component, right? You could see where they were.
Yeah.
And probably reflect that channel going in to Carrington Bay. Why not put a temporal filter on there too? Just say, okay, we know that that inflow is channeled into Carrington Bay. Why not remove them on that basis? And they're my plan. Would that be a possibility?
I think that would. My struggle with that was seeing it across sites within the South Arm. So there was a few observations where salinity was higher. So back in 2021, we saw some observations of higher salinity, which was occurring at the sites just barely south of where Bear River comes in, which was confusing. And then there's also lower salinity values also within Carrington Bay itself as well.
Exactly, and that's where that channel goes.
Yeah.
So Carrington Bay gets this freshwater-ish channel. Therefore, we don't want to use those points at that time, right, during the impacts inflow. Those higher salinity ones are pockets, right? The whole deep Rhinelander thing is a pocket filling process. And those pockets that you have south of N1018 are those.
Yeah.
You know, these ephemeral, what are now ephemeral hydro points. So you actually have a physiographic basis and a timed temporal basis for saying, okay, we don't want to average these particular things. I'd encourage you to use that.
Yeah.
Because we know a lot about what's driving those points.
Okay.
And then you mentioned volume averaging done by Christine, or you didn't, you mentioned volume averaging needs to be done. Christine did do volume averaging, but both bays treated as one body.
Yeah.
And I think what you're suggesting is, okay, let's separate Carrington and Gilbert. And I think that the big rationale for that is in fact the channel moving in. And so if you filter those out, then I don't know that you need to do separation of the two bays, but time will tell.
Okay. And I think there's an important point that Diana's finding in her research is to do a more accurate physics-driven salt balance model. It's very data hungry, and we don't have enough data. Even if you combine all of the data sets, which she's doing, and quantifying the uncertainty, we still don't have enough data. So the hope is that Diana's model will be handed off to either this group or USGS so that it can be used. But part of what she's doing is she's trying to quantify for all of us of what additional insights do we need so that we decrease our uncertainties and our estimates. Because if we're off by 50% with our salt mass, that's really difficult from a management perspective. So how do we tighten that up so that we're able to make better proactive decisions?
And to addition to that, I think the point Diana made about separating the two bays, because at this point of time when we are doing a complete volume, like doing the salt balance for the whole South Arm, what we get as one value may not be representative of the two or three parts of the lake on the south side. So maybe something which basically we do not need to have a very complicated model, but something which accounts for the three bays separately or two bays separately. Maybe we should try to do the filtering and it might help, but even despite that, I think maybe some sort of a multi-bay sort of a model might be the next step.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing against that. I'm just saying, look, there's a temporal aspect of when Carrington has that freshwater channel in it. So you know, it's partly recognizing the difference in the bays, but also recognizing the temporal aspect. And so I'm not disagreeing with your approach more than as much as saying, hey, recognize that we do know a lot about what's driving those.
Yeah, that was definitely a gap in the knowledge that I had. So thank you for your.
And I'm worried. I mean, we don't have enough data on salinity, which we have actually a lot of. You know, we should be able to use what we have because we have it streaming into the USGS, UGS, and other entities. I think there's good hope that we can have a good predictive model, and it makes me wonder, like, how far. So, your artificial neural network, Sean. You know, you mentioned it needs to account for these transient events, and particularly sessions, right, where you get a wind-driven wedge of water moving to one side of the lake, and it creates a situation where, you know, you pile up all of the shallow brine against the causeway, and therefore that's what's going on. Or likewise, if you pile up all of the shallow brine on the south arm, it's deep brine that gets, if it exists, pushed to the causeway. And so that's hard to take into account because it's not part of your normal, you know, counter-current flow. But it is possible to account for. And so I do think that, yes, tying to GSLIM makes some sense, but it's wind that primarily determines these events, and tying it to wind speed may actually be a faster, more simple approach to doing this, because we've played with sessions in the past in terms of understanding through temperature profiles how they control, do they cause mixing in the lake, basically is the question we were trying to answer. And not so much, it's more about wedging the water one direction or the other. And it's pretty easy to see what happens in response to the wind speed. So you might have a faster pathway by looking at wind speed. Not to say you don't tie to GSLIM, but I think there is a fast path.
So you make a really good point about the wind speed, because I did not show this, but when we made the ANN model, and we made two versions of it, one with the wind data, one without the wind data, and immediately when you have the wind data, the model's predictions gets better.
And in direction too, right?
Right.
There's a matter of
Wind
which
data,
direction.
wind speed and direction. Yes, absolutely. So yeah, the wind is playing a major role, and it shows up with the ANN model. Your real intelligence is showing, or what you're saying is what the artificial intelligence is.
And so I do wonder, how far does all this go before you can start accounting for big things we don't know, like groundwater inflow, right? And other things that are going to reasonably impact things within plus or minus 10%. And so I think we should just keep that in mind, that there's also these bigger things that we haven't constrained well yet, that could have the impacts that you're talking about in terms of accuracy.
Well, wind was a good segue. Sorry, I just want to make sure we have time for the other items in our.
I'll shut up now.
Sorry, Christina. So speaking of wind, Tim Davis, our Deputy Great Salt Lake Commissioner, is here to have a discussion on dust and dust research. So Tim, I will hand you the.
I thought it was hot air.
Yeah, I thought you were.
I thought that was hot air rather than dust. Hi, everybody. I haven't met you. This is Tim Davis. I'm the Deputy Great Salt Lake Commissioner. It's my second tech team. I'm happy to be told I have. So this will be pretty quick. I've talked with a number of conversations that I've had with USGS, with a number of the divisions. I want to propose, and I want to give people's feedback here, to pull together under the Great Salt Lake Commissioner's Office a dust forum. I'm looking in May. And one of the reasons for that is there's a lot of work going on dust. There's a lot of different groups working on it. But it sounds to me that it would be useful to get everybody who's working on dust from a university, from a regulatory, from a federal, state perspective, to sit down and talk about what research is going on, what research is needed, what are the gaps, what funding is out there, and what additional funding is needed. And that it would be I'm not talking about creating a big ongoing process, but more a forum that maybe if it's successful, we can renew. But one of the goals and one of the responsibilities of the Great Salt Lake Commissioner's Office is better coordination. We also, one of the key provisions of the Great Salt Lake strategic plan is both better coordination and making sure we have the best available science. And as we're moving forward with implementing the plan, we really need to make sure that we fully understand what's in the dust, who's at risk of it, where there might be hotspots, what we can do to mitigate it. All of those, we need to, the public deserves to have those answers, and we need to have it to figure out where we should be focusing our resources as a state and with federal partners and others. So I am, unless I see thumbs down or people tell me it's a terrible idea, it's unnecessary, I see one thumb up, two. And I'm thinking, Department of Health, the different divisions that are involved at DNR, DEQ, Division of Air Quality, USGS, UGS, USU, and the U, and then anyone else. I have reached out to CARE to see if there's interest. That I heard that they were going to be doing something on dust, but they haven't gotten back to me at this time. I was thinking that I would steal an email list that Molly gave me, but use that to invite anybody who's interested, keep it, and to pull together a team to help develop an agenda and make sure that we're inviting the right people. So again, I'm not planning to make this into a huge thing but first just let's figure out what we're doing, what we need to do, and how we get it done. So related to this. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions? I heard something online.
Just a thumbs up from Annie.
Okay. Thanks, Andy.
Would it be coordinated with Great Salt Lake issues?
Yeah. So we can certainly coordinate around that. When's the
May 8th, 9th, and 10th.
okay? Yeah, we can coordinate around that. I don't know if we can talk about how and when to best to pace. Any thumbs down? Okay. If anybody's interested in being part of working with me on putting together the agenda, let me just ask you to email me after this meeting. I know Willie, we've talked a little bit, Molly and others. So if you're interested, there's other people that are interested. Just let me know. I want to make this as streamlined as possible and get the right people around the room, and really making an open dialogue. So if you're interested, anyone online too, please email me and let me know that you're interested in being part of a team to pull together the agenda and make sure we got the right people invited. And my email is tdavis3@utah.gov. So any other questions or comments at this point? All right. Thanks, Bronson.
Thank you, Hot-Winded Tim. That was excellent, and we're definitely excited for that. I think we've had a lot of great dust discussions in this meeting, and I think kind of putting that all together in one space is going to be really beneficial. So definitely looking forward to that. Kind of on board. So with that, I'll open up the floor to any other member updates, issues, announcements, research. Anything anyone wants to announce, now is your time to take the floor. Cricket. Anyone online have any announcements? Okay. So with that, yes, Keith, hello.
I just wanted to give some updates for Phragmites numbers. We have finished 1,500 acres of trampling outside of Howard Slough WMA, and almost 1,800 acres of mowing and trampling outside of the Central Davis Sewer District outflow. And then our contractors are now moving to, one is going to the Willard Spur, and then another contractor will be working adjacent to Farmington Bay WMA, making its way west. from the Central Davis outflow.
Awesome. Thank you to our frag king. Does anyone have any comments, questions related to Keith's frag work? I'm full of words today. I don't know.
Spicy.
Spicy words. Great. Thanks, Keith, for sharing with us. Are there any other updates, announcements?
I'll just reiterate, the Friends of Great Salt Lake 2024 Great Salt Lake Issues Forum, May 8th, 9th, and 10th. And many of you are already on the program, but for those of you who aren't on the program, I hope you'll be there in the audience. Thank you.
Thanks, Len. Looking forward to that as well. So if no one has any further comments, our next tech team meeting will be May 14th in this room. And yeah, good luck with your research proposals, and please reach out to me with any questions about anything. I'm more than happy to help you out. And thanks for being here.